Hello everyone. What we'd like to discuss at this time is how to configure the image focus product, which is part of the integrity controls environment, to include the inspections for your most critical subsystems. Additional inspectors are available for JES 2 or 3, VTAM, TCP/IP and all of its subcomponents, and the startup of the CICS regions. And there's more that we can do as well, as we'll discuss as we go forward here. For those of you familiar with image focus, know that the inspections that we perform for the operating system looks at things like syntax problems, operational problems, issues dealing with references that don't resolve properly, and give a very detailed analysis about the operational integrity and readiness of the target, whether it be the operating system or as we move into these subsystems, we do the same level of analysis, looking for, again, the operational readiness and integrity of these subsystems as well. So let's go right to it and talk about how we can set this configuration up to include these environments individually or all of them at a single time or a single run of the inspection. I'm going to switch over to a 3270 session, and what we're looking at here is the license control cards for the integrity controls environment. What I'd like to point out to you is if your organization is licensed for what we're going to talk about here, which is the subsystem inspectors, you would see a license card like this in your deck that looks for option 1. It has a license code in it that activates the software, and then it's labeled subsystem inspector. So that's what we're talking about today. So that would be the first thing you want to check, is make sure that indeed you are licensed for those subsystems inspectors to be activated. Another way to tell very quickly if that is true is that we can go in and look at the actual workbench view of the inspections. If you recall, this is where we set up the different inspection requests, and I'm going to panel down now to where we actually define those inspections. Assuming that you're familiar with this, what we want to do is work with just one of the LPARs within the Sysplex. And when we select this, we'll see the options that can be turned on for this particular inspection request. The subsystem area, as you can see on my panel, is selectable and available, which means that it's licensed. So in your environment, if you go to this panel and these fields are not selectable, it means you're not licensed for those functions. The same is true for the other functions on the bottom, but those are talked about in additional videos. The point I want to make out here is this particular setting is something called the additional command member. Now, the way that these subsystems inspectors are triggered is it needs a start command. It needs to know what proc is being called and the options that would apply in order to start the JES, VTAM, TCP/IP, or the CICS regions. If those are already included in your ParmLab concatenation, either through a command member or through your JES definitions, then we can find them and we will process those inspections that we're using those start commands. If, however, they are not defined in your normal command member, but perhaps started by automation or still manually started by your operations people, then we need some way to pass those start commands to those various inspectors to see them. And that's what we do here. We ask you to build a command member with this suffix that you supply on the panel. And in that command member, you will pass the start commands appropriately for the various subsystems. And so we'll look at that now as we go forward. So this is an inspection I ran earlier. I'm going to open up the index for the last inspection log, and we'll take a look at that command IF member that I defined on that panel. Obviously, that member can only be used by the inspector, so you want to give it a unique suffix so that you know exactly which one is used. It can be used across all the inspection sources, whether it be the workbench or production view once you promote that into the background monitor. It can also be used inside the batch execution of the inspections, and it can also be used by the health checker for IPL alt. When you're specifying IP address and load parm to the health checker, you can also pass that member suffix and it will pick it up. So what we're going to do now is take a look at that command member, and it's building. It uses normal command syntax, so it'll be the start whatever component you want to start, put it in quotes, so it's all the same syntax rules as a regular command member. The difference is this member will be picked up by the inspector, and these various start commands will be processed either by the subsystem of JES or actually in startup if you have something where you've coded sub equal master. You'll notice that when we do this work, we're actually going to go find the appropriate procs and then analyze them in a couple different ways. Since in the cases where we have inspectors for them, we will actually inspect those environments, and those environments will show up on the index here. So you can see I've started VTAM, I've started TCP/IP, and some of its subcomponents have been listed here. I've started the CICS. All of these things now have been included in the inspection log as individual components. Again, inspecting down to the same level of detail and analysis that you would see for any operating system component. Now you'll notice there's an inspection here for a component called Pageant and some of its daemons. This requires a little bit more definition and customization in order to turn these inspectors on. That will be covered in a separate video, or you can request information from New Era Software through an email or through a phone call and ask for documentation on how to configure the Pageant inspector completely in order to get the full analysis. But once these inspections are done, again, it gives us all the full details. So you can see in the case of this Pageant example, it's over 13,000 lines long, and it goes through in great detail of its analysis of the particular start for this particular target. So regardless of which start command you supply to us, we will include that in the inspection logic and tell you what we find. So when we go down and look at, for example, the startup of the CICS region, we have a warning in here, and it's giving me information about the startup of that procedure. In this case, some of the data sets referenced are not being protected adequately by RACF, and so we have warnings for that. But it also documents, as you are used to for the operating system, all the parameters, all the statements are all being checked syntactically, referentially, and process in order, so make sure everything is done proper and complete. Now there's a couple of advantages to this. If we go back and look at the command member that I used, there were things in here specified that were not necessarily one of the subsystems for which we have inspections. Things like the logon procs that are available to the users. And what we're going to do is want to be able to test those logon procs at the same time during the inspection process. Now those will be started by JES2, so I can come down and look at the JES2 inspection of that same command member, and what we'll see is the analysis of the different components. And if we go down and look at those different components, here's the Pageant startup and the JCL associated with it. You'll notice that we send the JCL for these start commands over to the reader interpreter and make sure that there's no JCL errors within that particular start command. So this is one level of inspection that gives you clarity about whether or not those procedures that you've named in this additional command member are ready to be used. Again, operational readiness and trust the integrity of the statements. So here are the different logon procs. I strongly recommend that you consider putting your logon procs in here as a method of ensuring that they will act properly when someone tries to log on. And if there's modifications that result in a JCL error, you'll be made aware of it by the inspector. The other components are obviously also fully documented as well, anything that you name within that procedure. This would trigger the CICS inspection, the VTAM inspection, the JES inspection, the TCP/IP inspection, and all of its subcomponents. So you can see some of those listed here. So again, if you need more information about how to configure this or how to set up particularly the Pageant inspector, get a hold of New Era Software and we'll be glad to explain it to you. Now there's some additional benefits to using this additional command member and configuring this as well, in that we provide another layer of analysis that is fairly new to the image focus product, and we look for procedures that have been named to this process. So if I go back into my full inspection log that you might be familiar with, if we look for a certain message number, which is 464N, what we'll see is a new level of analysis being performed by the inspection. And what that level of analysis is is to look for possible abends as a result of authorization failures. So in this case, I'm looking at a startup of a CICS region. And what it did, it looked at all the data sets and all the components. I'm going to scroll back up and give you all the detail here. And it's telling me which ones it found, which ones it didn't, and tell me whether or not if there's any problems with that, but also doing the next level down, which is checking for authorization conflicts and problems that could lead and would lead, in this example, to an SO47 abend. So by placing the start commands in that additional command member and asking it to check the JCL through the interpreter and give you the analysis in the inspection log, you now have the added benefit of checking all those starts if they're supposed to be authorized and if they access the program property table and if they access the APF list in order to resolve all of that to see if there's a conflict that may add or create this SO47 abend. In the near future, we'll have more types of abends detected for different programs, but as of now, this is available to you in the most current release of the image focus product or the integrity controls environment. So that's what this is about. We strongly recommend that you go enable this capability, turn on the inspectors for the subsystems, JES, VTEM, TCP/IP, and startup of the CICS regions, and get the benefit of those inspections the same way you benefited from the inspection of the operating system environment. So in conclusion, what I want to do is point out to you that, again, we have this ability. It's very easy to activate, as you saw. If you have any questions or problems or we need more information, give us a call at newera.com, and we'll be glad to respond to your email or give us a call, and we'll be glad to return your call or have a conversation with you or set up a private webcast if necessary. So anyway, thank you very much for your attention, and hopefully this has shed some light on what your capabilities are and what you can do with the image focus product and extending it into the other areas and include the other critical subsystems. Thank you for your attention and use of image focus. Thank you.